I'm sure you've been able to do your 10K steps for the day.
I did more.
Perfect. You're right here, sir. Yes. So before we begin the session, we'd like to sort of have all speakers join us up front for a group picture, which is the mandate for the India AI team. So request all speakers to sort of gather in the front so that we can take a group picture. And also the CAS team, including Olivia and Stefan. The front is here. Thank you all. Just to set the context of this session, I'd like to invite Stefan Stamse from CAS to sort of give us a little bit of the context of what this session is going to explore. Stefan, please.
Well, good afternoon, Excellencies, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm representing the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, Rule of Law Program Asia. We are based in Singapore, and we are a long-term partner of the dialogue. So we have embarked on these issues many years ago, and we are happy to be part of the AI Impact Summit now this year. It couldn't be any more timely. I mean, the developments on the tech side are enormous, basically by the week, by the day, sometimes by the hour. And I mean, I would argue that we already see AGI, the artificial general intelligence. Maybe we are already on the way to a certain super intelligence. Maybe we will see singularity at one day, sooner or later. And of course, given all the chances, the opportunities that the tech side and the tech development has and provides for all of us, for all walks of life, communication, work, life as such, there are some downsides, obviously, some risks that we need to assess, that we need to take care of very well to keep things in balance. And that's why I'm happy that this week will be the forum for exactly those discussions. And on the German side, we are very much looking forward to engage with India and beyond. It's always good to be back in Delhi and embark on this. And I think that we do have the global dimension, but there's also, of course, the bilateral component that Europe and India can embark on. For example, when there's not too much of a difference when, for example, a school child or pupil in India or in Germany, in Europe, uses AI tools to conduct the homework, then most likely, as of today, the language models they use are not trained in India or in Germany. So we need to balance things out. We need to talk about the consequences that all of this means. Language is culture, culture is connected to ethical issues, values, health, and so forth, religion, and more. So we are very much open to embark on those discussions. That's why I'm happy that we have, on the German side, we are here with a number of speakers for this session, for this panel, 2 speakers. There's Markus Siewert from TUM, you might have heard of the institution, Technical University in Munich, and the think tank they have. They also have a presence in India. And of course, we have the Minister of the State of Hessen, the Minister for Digitalization and Innovation of one of the key states in Germany that is driving force in Germany when it comes to digitalization and also AI developments, Mrs. Christina Cinemus. She's on her way. I think now at gate 7, making her way. So I'm confident that we will see her here soon and contribute to this. So thank you very much to all of you on the panel, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. We were supposed to have the keynote address by Mr. Singhvi, but he's also on his way. He's almost reached the building. Apologies, but we will have his address a little later during the session. For now, given the paucity of time, I'll start the discussion. Through this panel today, we will try to explore how India and Germany are looking at their own national perspectives on rulemaking, how we're sort of advancing institutional accountability, preventing any power concentrations, and also learn a little bit about cross-jurisdictional learning and socio-political sensitivities that exist in both countries through the expertise of the panelists that we have on the dais. Without further ado, and also just to lay some ground rules, given that we have a set time limit, would request all my panelists to sort of give their remarks as succinctly as possible, but also sort of do engage the audience with whatever your expertise is. So we'd love to hear more from you, but also be cognizant of the time that we're trying to work out on. So I'll just quickly start. And Sasmit sir and Bharat sir, this question is to you. Maybe Dr. Patra, you can answer first, and then we go to Sribharat. But the idea is to understand, what India's current approach to AI governance essentially is. What are we thinking around the principles that we keep talking about, be it transparency, accountability, explainability, and others? How we are approaching it in the various sectoral laws that govern the country right now. What is the current status quo? If you can sort of enlighten the audience a little bit on that.
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief for an Indian politician. So I would use the operative word inclusive. In a country where data is not proportionately and evenly distributed, we have, and I'm also a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology, our focus is on soft touch regulations. So we are not looking at this point of time on very hard knuckle regulation like the India EU AI Act that we have. But having said that, we are focused on a constitution-based approach. The constitution-based approach is based on equality, transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. So having said that, the regulations that we are focusing on today as a nation, and at least at the parliamentary level, is to ensure that while we do have guardrails to ensure that we have responsible AI, at the same point of time, we do not want to have such hard-bound laws coming in that will stifle innovation and probably not allow our innovators and entrepreneurs to also move forward. So very briefly, I must say that it's a constitution-based approach based on value. As we know that the rural economy that we have, the data may not be as easily accessible and probably not readily available as probably urban India. We still have a digital divide. So being responsive to those approaches and the needs that are still there, and the lack of probably enough data available across every village and every district of this country, we have to ensure that inclusivity stays a key element, and interoperability through the DPI, the Digital Public Infrastructure, and the DPI stack that we have is ensured.
Thanks, Dr. Patra. Bharat sir, what are your views on this? How is India sort of approaching the conversation on AI governance? And are there any lessons from us from the EU AI Act as we see it, which is the risk-based approach that they follow? And is it anything that we can adopt from them, learn from them, or do better?
Firstly, we're all a little scared. What's going to happen to the world? As a public representative, as Dr. Patra said, we are here in a life of service to ensure that we bring balance to society. But I recently was reading a tweet written by Mr. Ray Dalio. He was speaking about, I don't know if any of you have read it. It's speaking about how history has taught us how powers work. So essentially, rules are demanded by the weak to control the powerful. And the powerful don't operate by any rules. They change the rules once they get the power. So when we are in government now, there is both an explicit and an implicit choice that we have on how we are going to govern ourselves. Based on my work in the last 2 years, I want to believe that the government and my party, which is a part of the India Alliance, are good actors, and they do care about ensuring that there is a rule-based order and the constitutional values are upheld. Having said that, how we navigate this AI era, I don't think there is one fixed path yet. We don't have an act in India yet. We're a democracy, and as a democracy also there's a lot of diversity in terms of language, economic prosperity, access to information. So we have to be conscious of all these things when we take decisions. And I hope, I invite all of you in the audience that I represent the state of Andhra Pradesh, and we are also part of the NDA. If any of you have any ideas, because we are in some sense just your representatives, right? So you come and speak to us, we engage with you, and through that dialogue, India is going to move forward. So we are not experts on anything. We rely on you. Thank you for making time to come to this panel. And I'm saying, what is our intent? Our intent is to create a balanced, equitable society in India, where those who have the best ideas are given the access to pursue those ideas, whether it be access to data, access to resources, access to good rules. Because often rules and the system is designed in such a way that it doesn't help the small guys. They normally always help the big guys. The big guys remain big because of it. There's a lot of force on us, many of which, a lot of which we can't come out and say. But the few good people are standing between anarchy and rule-based orders. I'll pause.
Thank you, sir. I think what your opening remarks have also underlined and resonated clearly with the audience is the need for inclusiveness, something that Dr. Patra also underscored in his comments. And with this, I come to you, Mr. Markus. We've been talking a lot about inclusiveness as a principle. Given your work in this space, I'd love to understand from you, how do we really translate this principle of inclusiveness into something actionable when we are thinking about it from a regulatory, from a governance standpoint? How do we translate that in reality on ground? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this panel. Really honored to come all the way here from Munich, join in this conversation. It's funny that you asked me this question, to be honest, because at least my personal opinion and perspective is always that I look to India, to the South countries in order to understand better how to build inclusivity and into technology. I think these are conversations that we usually maybe have in Germany, second order or third order, and I always have the feeling these questions are much more prevalent whenever I come to India or visit African countries and so forth. How to build it and include it into the regulatory scheme. So what we do a lot in the team, my wonderful colleagues at the TUM think tank, we work a lot on regulatory learning, and a little bit echoing what has been said here before on the panel is like it starts with the prerequisite that we don't know if we're honestly true where the field is moving at the moment. So we need to have a more humble approach in that sense, and think about, okay, what kind of mechanisms can we put in place in order to learn while doing stuff. And if we think about the inclusion principle, I think we can go through the policy cycle, think about when we think first upstream, really early in the process, that we gather weak signals about the technology, what problems are there, include stakeholders that are relevant early on, create something like peer-to-peer learning mechanisms to exchange ideas, and then we can translate that through in the midterm and midway through the policy cycle. I think we have already a really good established toolkit that we can use, whether it's policy pilots, whether it's sets, whether it's other tools which allow us to experiment, and not only as a regulatory mechanism, but really as a participatory tool in order to involve like the people that are affected by a certain technologies, right? And then last point in this downstream, it's all about the policy feedback loops, right? So what do we then actually do when we implement the policy, and how can we keep up with then the stakeholders that are using the technology and so forth. So what I want to stress is I think there's no one tool that fits everything, but it's really like more of a mental model that we need to apply here instead of like how can we learn in this fast-paced world.
Thanks, Dr. Markus. It does make sense that a lot of this is for us is also to learn eventually of how things translate into action, which brings me to Ivana here. Given Wipro's leadership in AI governance, would love to understand from you, Ivana, how you envisage India to translate some of these global AI principles that we keep hearing about. How can India truly translate it into action when we talk about its governance here?
Thank you so much, and it's great to be here, not only because I work for an Indian company heading up governance and translating a lot of this into practice, but also because I live in Germany, so I couldn't be more at home. And yes, I mean, it's a very good question. I think the key here, of course, Germany, the European Union, and India, there's a different approach to regulation. European AI is based approach, ex-ante legislation before a product hits the market. Let's look at the basis. Indian approach, very interesting, a techno-legal approach, say, okay, before putting in law, first we evaluate the laws out there. Yeah, for example, privacy legislation, just being operationalized with the rules. Very important because AI does not exist in isolation. Yeah, privacy legislation, consumer legislation, all applies to AI. So the approach I've seen so far in India is to say, before we enact new legislation, we look at existing laws and see how it squares with the potential new harms coming from artificial intelligence. And we look at use cases, and we look at embedding embedding the controls into the design of the systems. Now, that is the solution to me. The reason why I'm saying this is because we need to operationalize governance, not just as a compliance overhead. We have to stop seeing governance of artificial intelligence as compliance. We have to see governance of artificial intelligence as the way forward for us, for businesses, as well as governments and states, to put in the market products that are resilient, safe, and they bring long-term value. If I put in the market, or if I work with a client and I have a product that is biased, if I have a product that is not safe, I'm not creating innovation that I can get behind, because it's not going to bring me long-term value. So it's really important that we don't look at governance as a compliance tick box exercise. We look at governance as the way to create long-term value, innovation, growth, productivity, and all of this. This is where I think the theme of this summit is important. When you talk about democratizing AI, which is the core of the summit, democratizing AI doesn't simply mean that you give everybody tools. It means that you are inclusive in the way that these tools are designed in the first place, because this is the core of inclusion. We can't have tools that are designed by a small minority. We can't have tools in one part of the world. We cannot have tools that do not represent the diversity, the complexity, the ethical values that bring communities together. This is very, very important. So I'll close by saying design is crucial. How we design these tools, what are the controls that we put in place, the way that we don't see governance just as risk management, but we see it as embedding values, embedding very strong design choices into products.
Thanks, thanks for sort of underscoring some of the do's that really need to go in when we talk about AI governance at large. And with this, Mr. Anand, I come to you. We've been talking a lot about what needs to be done, but I want you to sort of comment on what should policymakers avoid today so as to avoid any kind of reactive policy making, which then leads us to sort of ponder upon later. So your thoughts on that? What needs to not be done as of now?
So first and foremost, I must say that it's a great compliment to a speaker to have so many people in such a small room. But I think that will encourage us to and probably bring out the best out of us. The world has had roughly about 148 bills on AI from 32 countries in the last few years. And the approaches have been either that the law of the country is good enough and doesn't need a change. And that's broadly what we've been saying in India, that our laws are quite sufficient. Or in some countries, they've followed the European risk model. And in some countries, like in US, the No Fakes Act and the No AI Fraud Act has followed the right to publicity model. Those are the three very broad kinds of legislation that there have been. India, you must remember, legislation takes a lot of time. So just to give you an idea, in the last 10 years or so, there have been roughly about 20 to 30 bills which became acts in 1 year in India, as opposed to the figure goes in European Parliament, something like 300, 400. They passed bills or passed laws on the smallest of things, including the bubble size of champagne. So you can imagine how much of legislation takes place. Therefore, what do we do in India to attain speed? Our courts are proactive. The courts come up with solutions. To give you an idea, domain name cases. On the internet, meta tagging, hyperlinking, framing, phishing. All of these, there was no law in India, but the courts found solutions, including right of privacy, right of publicity. Privacy, we had Poonam Devi's case much before we got the DPTP. We had cases on well-known trademarks much before the 1999 Act introduced that concept legislatively. And we had the domain name, the Anton Pillar order introduced. I mean, in the 1980s, we had Anton Pillar orders to seize evidence much before it was introduced in the trademark legislation in 1999. So the model that we've been following is problem arises, 1. 2, the courts try to solve that problem. 3, when the courts have done that for about 10 years, then some kind of a legislative solution comes. The question is, let me give us speed, but it doesn't give us certainty. Why? Because one judge will disagree from another, or even distinguish a higher court's decision. And they think he has a role. So how do we attain certainty? One way, of course, is to have more objectivity in our laws, which means that AI laws to make them as objective by rules as we can. That's one way. And the other way, I think, is that we try to legislate not by primary legislation, but by rule making, by principles, by guidelines, which is what India has been doing. All the guidelines, principles of AI have come first as non-enforceable guidelines, and in due course of time, they will become rules and become law. So that policy in due course of time becomes a law. So today, for example, intermediary liability under Section 79 of the IT Act. When it was originally enacted, I think 2001, there was nothing to do with AI. But AI principle, AI cases came to court. We had a whole lot of personality cases with Anil Kapoor, Amitabh Bachchan, Aishwarya Rai, etc. They were all protected without a law, simply on common law principles. Then came the amendment in 2026. An amendment has come which recognizes in the IT rules of 2021, which have now been amended with effect from 2026 to recognize synthetic material. So problems of deep fakes, problems of bias, all that, dark patterns. Now there's a guideline which is an enforceable guideline. But we had dark pattern cases before that. So the law, the court's solution has now been implemented as soft law, which is the guidelines and rulemaking, secondary legislation, and slowly will become hard law. That's the path that we will follow.
Thanks for sort of breaking that down, Mr. Anand. I also welcome Mr. Singhvi, who's sort of now in the room. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We'll be hearing him shortly after the panel closes as the closing address remark. Thank you, sir, for making the time for this. Coming back to you, Dr. Patra, we've been speaking a lot on what's happening in Germany, what in Canada also Mr. Anand also highlighted on how laws have already existed and they've been sort of catering to the evolution of AI as we've seen it. But when we talk about it from a socio-political context, right, and given the diversity that exists in a country like ours, what adaptations do you think we need to keep in mind to ensure that nobody misses out in this whole race of AI as we speak and know of?
I believe it's the last three letters of your panel today, rule of law. If rule of law as a basic driving principle is used, only then we'll be able to ensure that in the socio-political landscape of India, given its diversity, I'll give you a very small example. If, let's say, an AI tool is developed that can probably identify beneficiaries, all of you, in some way or the other, versus your voting patterns. All right? Now, many of you, I believe most of you are not farmers here, but now take that example into the farmnet and say that a farmer is a beneficiary of a specific program of the government and gets 10,000 Indian rupees every quarter. And then if you link all the beneficiaries together, all the benefits that we get to an AI platform that is able to then decipher to a certain extent a voting pattern of their respective districts, panchayats, booths, or wards. So what you then know is who's getting the benefit and who's voting for whom, approximately. That's dangerous. Let's say, for example, youngsters are here from various universities. If, let's say, an AI platform is able to crawl through your social media and understand your mindset as far as your postings are concerned, and then is able to derive, probably tomorrow when you apply for a government job, then that's dangerous. So citizenry versus the governance, versus the law, versus the benefits, all have to align together on a rule of law. Where irrespective of your preferences and choices as an individual, Article 19 famously quoted as right of expression. Let's say you express something, it is not dangerous. There's no case against you. But somewhere down the line, when you've probably done 10 years, 15 years of some work, and suddenly that becomes a determinant through an AI platform which is yet to appear before us and stares you in your face. Like, for example, the US government has already said if you're applying for a US visa, any one of you, you have to unlock your privacy settings and allow that your social media be read. That is dangerous. So for India, for our diversity, where even today, 60% of people vote against the government of the day. The government that is in power gets 43% vote share, which roughly means about 60% are voting against. So AI tools, when they come in, have to ensure that if the algorithm in some way starts reading into these patterns, then the rule of law goes for a toss. Therefore, from the perspective of citizenry, 1.4 million people, whether he's a farmer, he's a fisherman, he is a Manrega worker who gets a 300 rupees per day, or a student in JNU or Delhi University, whatever you do or you don't do should not be held against you as long as it is the contours of it. Then you have a very safe, responsible, and inclusive field. That is why I said the last 3 letters of this panel is going to be the driving force, because that is part of the unwritten code of Indian Constitution. Rule of law, which we borrowed from the British. And that is why, as long as we are able to sustain the rule of law, that is why I said, Honorable Prime Minister has also been saying, we are moving from an ethical AI, responsible AI, to an inclusive AI culture. Unless there is inclusivity, a person in India also earns 30 rupees a day, and a person in India also earns 30 crores a day. From the Adanis and Ambanis of India to a man who earns probably 100 rupees a day, all of them are equal in the eyes of Indian law. That is the power of the Indian Constitution. And that is why the rule of law and the basic tenets of our principles of our republic have to be seen through the AI. And if there is any change or any diversion of that, then it will destroy the very fabric of what we stand for. It's not directed at any government. It's for generations to come. Because Gen AI 3 years back was doing something differently that is doing today. And exponential is going to do something very different in the next 5 years that we don't even know of. And that is why it's very important that the rule of law and inclusivity are the key binders which will be able to circumvent socio-cultural landscape.
Thank you for that articulation, Dr. Patra. I think you very rightly highlighted the need for rule of law and also for democratic resilience as we know it. And that brings me to you, Sribharat sir. We've been talking a lot about, what we can do and how to navigate that space and, what we can learn from the socio-political context of a country like ours. But from you, I'd like you to sort of elaborate a bit on, how to also avoid any kind of power concentrations as we know it, right? We know that there are, a lot of companies that are booming. There's a big startup ecosystem in the country right now that India is sort of proud to host. Would love to understand what should we do as you being a policymaker to ensure that the power does not concentrate in the hands of a few and sort of gets distributed for all.
It's too late for that. I think power has been concentrated in our society for a very long time, far before I was born.
We're joined by Dr. Christina. She's the Minister for Digitalization and Innovation at the Hessian Ministry of Digitalization and Innovation at Germany. Thank you so much, ma'am, for finally making it. And we know that you've had a tiring flight, but thank you for making it to the panel. Yes.
So, how many of you watch science fiction, dystopian movies, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, right? There's this scrappy band of people that come together against a big bad evil force, and by pure luck and some talent, they're able to save the world. And then we feel the movie is over, but then there's a sequel, and the evil comes back. So, in that sense, we have to recognize that we're very transient, and we're going to die, and no matter how hard we work, how much peace we bring, conflict will come back. So I derive joy not in the destination, but in the journey. the joy is in playing the game, and it is to, and also it's exciting to do something that many others do. So power is concentrated, so we can't avoid that. What we are trying to do is ensure that it doesn't become further concentrated, and that we're trying to democratize access to more people, so that more people can ensure that there's going to be a better future, at least as long as I'm alive after that. So in this, if you see, when calculators came and when the phone came, earlier I used to remember 200-300 numbers. Now I remember maybe 10 numbers, 15 numbers. I used to do complex multiplications and mathematical calculations in my mind. Now I don't do anything. I rely on the calculator. So with AI, my worry is that people will export their thinking also to some engine, and they lose their own ability to think originally. And then we lose control. We become a slave to somebody else's agenda. So my desire as a policymaker, as a leader, as an educator, I also lead a university, is to protect, develop original thinkers in whatever number, and start from a very young age. Because our large public schools, government schools, CBSE schools, many of them don't develop or create original thinkers. And we're in a world where it seems to be that more than rules, power is determining how things go. So at least in India, we want to be an alternate symbol of hope for the world, where we say that in India, we will work towards following the rule of law, providing access to original thinkers. We'll invite any of you, if you're in different countries and you feel your country is not providing that platform, please come to us. We're not perfect. We have a lot of problems, but intent is there to do good. The other premise is that I feel, or at least I hope, that AI is not going to take over like the movie I, Robot and wants to kill us all. I want to believe that at least a very small subset of human beings will still be the decision makers of the future course of our society. So those few decision makers should have good intent. So my role is to ensure that those people are protected, those people are empowered, those people are heard, and those few people come together to shape how the country moves forward. And through India, we set a model for the rest of the world on how we should do things. And like-minded nations should come together in these times, because we can't do things together. Sorry, we can't do things alone. When we come together, I think we share best practices. Like-minded nations, I think, will bring balance to the world. That's what I believe.
Thanks,
Thank
Dr. Bhatt. Thanks, sir. Dr. Christina, we can now come to you. We've been waiting to hear from you a little bit on how, you at HES, given your ministry, how are you translating some of these principles of AI governance as we know it into action? And also, are there any examples from your public sector initiatives that you can elaborate a little bit upon, so that we can also learn and see how India can also draw some values from that? So, but also I'd like to flag that we're also running short on time. So just to be cognizant of that.
I tried to make it very brief.
Perfect.
So it's really changing of world coming from the snow here to India. So because there was a delay because it was snowing, and I think to have this different worlds is the same as AI has implemented with the ChatGPT in 2011. In 2090, the whole world is going in another dynamic. And I think what is our task from the policy side is, on one hand, to really try to make rules which have transparency on one hand, but on the other hand, to have trust in the rules and to have trust in the policymakers. And therefore, there are two actions I would like to point out what I'm doing as Ministry of Digitalization and Innovation. No, three. The first is I trust the innovation of my country and the people who have innovative ideas through AI. And therefore, we invest in the brains. We invest in the brains with a program, and they get, even the ones who make their PhD at the university and so on, get money for showing that their AI products are functioning. So we trust them in their good brains and ideas. That is one thing what we are doing. Have now 107 startups. We have, as a ministry, invest in 170 startups. The second is we found in GmbH together with a big association. It's the Association of Engineering, VDE it's called, and they found with us in GmbH. And what we want to do is to generate a clearly label for qualitative AI. We have an AI quality and testing hub. We built this, and then we want to produce these labels. I think that's important. And the producing of the labels is along the AI Act. And the third, because I'm speaking about trust, I start 3 years ago a tour. I go with AI exponents through the marketplaces all over Germany and show the people what AI positive things can do. For instance, for healthcare, for instance, for planning cities. And in going to the marketplaces and speak with the people and say, we want to help us to have a good future in innovative and AI, in this kind of dialogue, I think that's important. That's a kind of building trust. And I think building trust, having transparency, and have rules which we as policymakers are following and show the people that they have a chance for the future. I think that are maybe the 3 pillars I want to give you as an idea.
Thank you, Dr. Christina. That's very insightful. Given the paucity of time, I'd like to come back to the 3 people that I could not come back to and give 2 minutes each to all of you, Ivana, Dr. Markus, and Mr. Anand, to sort of share your concluding remarks before we welcome Mr. Singhvi for his closing address. So maybe, Ivana, we start from you and then move on to Dr. Markus and Mr. Anand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have got a unique challenge right now, which is really about not just about AI capabilities, because these will grow and they grow on a daily basis, not just AI capabilities, but about the institutional capability that we have as countries, as companies, to make sure that we can govern these changes. And I think this is a wonderful challenge to have, regardless of whether we have the European AI Act or whether we have techno-legal approach. That is the key thing. The countries that will now make it are the countries who are going to have this institutional capability to really take on this massive change and govern it in the right direction. And I think this is great. The last thing I wanted to say is I have the most wonderful job in the world, because I, more than the politicians, because it's the job of working with product managers of AI systems and working with them and say, hey, how are we going to embed privacy, security, resilience, legal safeguards into the products that we're making? This is fantastic. And what I would like to see in India, as in Germany, where I live, by the way, I would like to see participation on what are the best practices to make this happen? What are the privacy enhancing technologies that we can take? What does it mean to design the trust stack into, for example, agentic AI? Having that really concrete good practice on how we can code and design legal safeguards into the tools that we put out there.
Thanks, Ivana. Dr. Markus, also reminding about the time again.
I tried to be brief. Yeah, maybe 2 thoughts that resonate that have been posed here at the panel. So I think one thing is about, policymaking needing to be concise, what you also alluded to. I mean, what we're currently experiencing in Germany and in Europe probably is like a struggle between ex ante and ex post regulation. And, we can't decide whether we go this way or that way. And where we put our resources in, where do we build this institutional capacity? And I think we just need to make one choice, either or, in order to build that capacity, in order then follow through. Because what we experience at the moment is kind of that we don't have the capacity to enforce either or. And so it's the worst of both worlds. Secondly, power, I think, is a crucial point, and I would strongly resonate what you meant. I think many of the developments are already past and are embedded into our society. So, however, we need to look carefully and what processes can we change. So maybe we can't do nothing about who owns the data, who has data centers, who owns the large LLMs. We can't change that by tomorrow, but we can change something about how we involve people, right? And who we assign power to in the process of giving them a voice. This is something that we can change, and we need to be a little bit more, maybe proactive in mapping the field of dependencies and power struggles in this field.
Thanks, Dr. Markus. Mr. Anand?
So there are, we all see that there are two sides to the AI coin. There's a opportunity side and there's a risk side. And as a result of the risks, what is happening is that there have been violations, breach of personality rights, IP violations, when copyright cases have come up, defamation, breach of privacy, and a whole lot of other wrongs. Roughly about 1,000 to 3,000 cases have gone to courts in about 35 countries of the world. And one thing is coming out quite clearly, and that is that in all these cases, you need to prove electronic documents. You have to show that a particular page, for example, is an accurate page. So you have to prove that, and we've got the laws for that. We've got section 63(4) of the BSA, which is the New Evidence Act, by which we can prove all electronic documents. However, attribution, how do you show that that document has originated from the person who you think is the wrongdoer or who you allege to be the wrongdoer? So the whole lot of attribution rules are used. And we follow a mosaic theory, which means it's not one evidence, it's a host of evidences put together. There may be in whose name is the phone registered, in whose account is the website registered. It may be things of that kind. Money trails to follow, time logs, and a host of other pieces of evidence together help you prove that a particular electronic record has originated from a particular person. But what happens when you file these cases? Defendants fail to appear. The result, you can stop the wrong, but you can't get money. You can't put them behind bars. Now that's a big drawback globally. It's not an India phenomena. It's the same problem in Germany, same problem in most other countries. So we end up presuming, the courts have to draw presumptions. So presumptions come from, for example, section 114 of the Indian Evidence Act, that if the defendant doesn't appear, then whatever the plaintiff has said is presumed to be correct. So presumptions are resorted to. But discovery law, although it exists in our act, interrogatories, inspection, Anton Pillar orders, all those mechanisms exist, but discovery laws have yet to develop in India. You'll find in the US, the cases involve truckloads of discovery. And there used to be this concept of document dump. You ask somebody to discover the emails, he sends you a truck of emails. How do you go through it? Now with AI, you can go through it. You can find out that one email, which is the clincher. And so discovery laws in India, although they exist on paper, they need to be developed. Then reversal of burden of proof, because in a lot of these cases, you have to presume that it's a strict liability test, which has to be imposed. Particularly what in European EU AI Act has a unacceptable risk standard. For that, all the wrongs, there's a total ban. And so if somebody's been caught with that kind of a wrong, he is presumed to be wrong, which is a strict liability. irrespective of mens rea or intention. You have to assume. So that's how we need to develop two areas. One is reversal of burden of proof, as we have in section 104A of the Patents Act, and better development of discovery laws.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. Thank you all to all my panelists for your insights. Given the paucity of time, I know I've been running, but I now welcome Mr. Singhvi for his closing address. Thank you so much, sir, for making the time. Mr. Singhvi is the Additional Secretary at the Ministry of External Affairs, and it's our honor to have him give the closing address for this.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me thank the organizers, the dialogue, and the partner institutions for convening this timely and important conversation in this India AI Impact Summit. And it is an honor for me to join legislators, ministers, members of parliament, scholars, industry leaders, and colleagues from different parts of the world for this policymaker dialogue on AI policy evolutions and the rule of law. Friends, we are meeting at a moment when artificial intelligence, as you all know, is no longer a distant technological horizon. It is already shaping economies, governance systems, and the daily lives of our citizens. The real question before us, therefore, is not whether AI will transform society. That transformation is already underway, but whether we can ensure that this transformation remains democratic, accountable, and firmly anchored in the rule of law. And you have heard the learned speakers talk about this, that how we can ensure that. And this question becomes even more relevant when we speak of democratizing AI resources, which is, I think, also some speakers alluded to. And when we use the word democratization, I think it is worth pausing to reflect on what we truly mean. Democratization is not merely about access to computational power or advanced models. It is also about access to quality data sets, institutional safeguards, transparent governance systems, and legal records when things go wrong. In essence, to my understanding, it means ensuring that AI does not concentrate power in the hands of few, whether governments, corporations, or algorithmic elites, but instead expands opportunity, fairness, and participation. And when we view this in this light, the democratization of AI becomes inseparable from the democratization of governance itself. Friends, history tells us that every major technological shifts reshapes the relationship between the state, citizen, and the market. We have seen in the history. The printing press widened access to knowledge. Electricity, as you all know, powered industrial transformation and industrial revolution. The internet rewired communication and commerce. AI, however, is different. And it's different in one profound respect, that it can influence decisions, shape behaviors, and determine outcomes at scale. That is why precisely governance in the AI age cannot remain reactive. It must be anticipatory, principled, and inclusive. And this brings me to the core of today's discussion, that is operationalizing the rule of law in the age of AI. How do we do it? What does that mean in practice? And to my mind, at its heart, the rule of law rests on three core concepts: accountability, transparency, and fairness. We have heard learned speakers speak about all these in different flavor. And when we look at it in the context of AI, to my understanding, accountability requires that decisions made or assisted by algorithms remain explainable and contestable. Transparency demands clarity in data usage, model design, and decision pathways. And fairness requires that AI systems do not replicate or amplify historical biases embedded in the society. These principles may sound abstract, but they must be translated into the legislative frameworks regulatory institutions, and also judicial oversight mechanism that citizen can trust. Now, if you look at India's approach to AI governance, you will find that it has evolved from its development priorities and democratic ethos. Our objective is not merely to regulate risk, but also to harness AI for inclusive growth, improved public service delivery, and social empowerment. And we are doing that. You all know about the digital public infrastructure. Through this DPI, from Aadhaar to UPI to DigiLocker, you are all aware that we have democratized how technology can scale inclusion at population scale. Inclusion has been talked about here in a great detail, and that is very important. And as AI becomes integrated into these ecosystems, our guiding principles, I think, must remain trust, safety, and accessibility, and that is very important. The India AI mission, as you all know, for instance, seek to expand compute access, support indigenous innovations, and promote responsible AI development while ensuring that benefits reach citizens across geographies and socioeconomic backgrounds. At the same time, we must also recognize that AI governance cannot be confined within national boundaries. And that is, again, very important. Algorithms do not respect boundaries. They travel across jurisdictions. Data flows across continents, and digital services transcend geography. Global cooperation, therefore, becomes essential, and different regulatory approaches offers different frameworks. You have heard about how Europe's risk-based regulatory approach offers valuable insight into safeguarding rights and managing systematic risk. But on the other hand, India's development-centric model emphasizes scalability, affordability, and societal benefits. But rather than viewing these approaches as competing paradigms, to my mind, I think we should see them as complementary. And I think their convergence can build an AI ecosystem that is both safe and socially transformative. Now, this raises a very important question. Can we evolve shared global principles while respecting diverse socio-political contexts? And to my mind, I think, yes, we can. Such a framework, to my understanding, would rest on common values such as human dignity, democratic accountability, technological openness, and equitable access. It would encourage interoperability of standards while allowing policy flexibility to reflect local realities. It would promote innovations while safeguarding rights. And above all, it would recognize that trust is the currency of the digital age. And in this journey, the role of legislatures, courts, regulatory institutions is central. Lawmakers must craft forward-looking policies that are technologically informed yet constitutionally grounded. Courts must interpret emerging disputes with sensitivity to both innovations and right protection, and that is very, very important as we go forward in development of AI for the larger public good. Regulators at the same time must remain agile, capable of responding to rapid technological evolutions without stifling progress. And governance must also be participatory, incorporating voices from academia, civil society, industry, and citizens themselves. And when governance becomes participatory, I think legitimacy naturally flows and follows. Now, allow me to pause and pose a simple but fundamental question here. That is, who benefits from AI? And if the answer is limited to those with access to data, capital, and compute power, I think we risk deepening inequality. And that is something very important. Honorable Member of Parliament also spoke about that. But if the AI improves healthcare access in rural areas, enhance learning outcomes in underserved communities, optimizes agriculture for the small farmers, and delivers public services with transparency and efficiency, then AI can become a force multiplier for equity. And I would say the direction we choose will depend on the governance framework we build today. And in this context, I think India's digital journey offers useful lessons in building at scale while preserving democratic accountability. Open standards, interoperable platforms, and public-private collaborations have created ecosystems that fosters innovation while promoting citizen rights. And as AI become embedded with these systems, our focus remains on building trust through safeguards, grievance redressal mechanism, and responsible data governance practices. Another important aspect which I want to highlight and has become very important is that geopolitical competition increasingly intersects with technological advancement, and you all know that. AI governance is also emerging as an important dimension of strategic diplomacy nowadays. And it is therefore important that we cooperate and collaborate. Cooperation in AI standards, ethical frameworks, and research partnerships can build bridges of trust among nations. Conversely, on the other hand, fragmented regulatory regimes risk creating digital silos and widening technological divides. And in this context, I think dialogues such as this, bringing together policymakers from across the region, are therefore vital in shaping a cooperative digital future. But despite all this, however, I think the regulations alone will not ensure responsible AI. Capacity building is also equally critical. Policymakers need technological literacy. Regulator needs analytical tools. Judges need technical understanding. Citizen needs digital awareness. Democratizing AI resources, therefore, also means democratizing knowledge and institutional capacity. And without this, even the most well-designed legal frameworks will struggle in implementation. So as we navigate this transition, to my mind, three guiding ideas may help us stay on course. First, governance must remain human-centric, ensuring that technology serves people. Second, it must be inclusive, reflecting the diversity of the societies. Honorable Member of Parliament has alluded to a great respect on this. And third, I think it must be adaptive, evolving alongside technological changes rather than lagging behind. And friends, the rule of law is not an obstacle to innovation, as often people think that rule of law is something which is going to stifle innovation and so. But to my mind, it is the foundation. Trust enables adaptation. Predictability encourages investment. Accountability sustains legitimacy. And when citizens trust that AI systems are fair, transparent, and contestable, they are far more willing to embrace technological transformation. Now, let me conclude with a thought. The future of AI governance will not be determined only in laboratories or boardrooms. It will be shaped in legislatures, courtrooms, and democratic forums such as this one. And the choices which we make today will determine whether AI becomes an instrument of concentration or a catalyst for empowerment. And if we align innovation with democratic values, we will not only regulate technology, we will shape a future where technological progress and human dignity advances together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I invite Kazim to hand over the mementos to the speakers. So speakers, can you please take your places in front of the dais?
Ma'am, you are. I'm Sarika Guliani, a Senior Director and Head of Technology from FICCI. And like I mentioned, we are very, very happy to present this session under the aegis of AI Impact Summit, done with our partners from the India-Singapore Business Forum. We have an esteemed set of panel who's going to talk about on the various aspects. While the dais is being settled, I'll just give your thoughts on what is India Singapore Business Forum. So it's a very high powered platform which has been created. There is something called India Singapore Ministerial Discussions which happen a forum, and on the sidelines there is a business forum. The business forum looks into the various aspects which is important for the, I would say, the bilateral, as well as not limiting ourselves to the discussions only to Singapore. As a joint partner of India Singapore, what else can be done globally? One of the subjects which the panel presents today is harnessing AI for fraud prevention and financial inclusion. Today the session with the panelists which we have is Mr. Suresh Sethi, Managing Director and CEO of Protean eGov Technologies, Mr. Saurabh Mittal, Country Head Strategy Transformation Analytics and Research, DBS India, Mr. Bhuvan Lodha, Chief Executive Officer, AI Division, Mahindra and Mahindra. Mr. Srijay Ghosh, Managing Director, Temasek. Mr. Manish Agarwal, President and Business at Kotak 811, Kotak Mahindra Bank. So this is the panel, and the session is going to be moderated by Mr. Neeraj Agarwal, Managing Director and Senior Partner, Singapore BCG. Before I hand it over to you, Neeraj, can I request Suresh to kindly deliver the welcome remarks and share a brief thoughts on the ISBR and how we are looking it forward and the participation of the room. Over to you, Suresh. Okay, I think there is a need from the organizer side to have a quick photograph for the speakers. Can I request you for a group photograph first? Yeah, please. And ma'am, we will be handing it over to you 5 minutes late. Thank you. Mr. Sethi.
Okay, friends, good afternoon. Am I audible? So, distinguished audience, fellow ecosystem builders, ladies, gentlemen, it's a privilege to be here today at the India AI Summit. As Sarika mentioned, we are very happy to be here to talk to you at this important dialogue under the aegis of the Indo-Singapore Business Roundtable. The ISBR was created as a formal institutional mechanism to deepen economic and strategic collaboration between India and Singapore. It brings together policymakers, regulators, and very importantly, the industry from both countries to identify concrete, actionable initiatives across priority sectors. We are going across a stream of sectors, including digital infrastructure, financial services, trade, sustainability, and now increasingly artificial intelligence. ISBR is definitely not just a talk forum. Its core purpose is to translate bilateral intent into execution-led outcomes, supported by policy alignment, regulatory coordination, and industry-led innovation. Over time, ISBR has evolved into a trusted platform where both the governments and industry can jointly address shared challenges, especially that cannot be solved by any single institution or country acting alone. The focus on digital and AI infrastructure, which frames part of today's discussion, reflects a clear recognition that digital trust is now foundational to economic growth, financial stability, and inclusion. This brings me to the theme of this session. Today we are going to be talking about harnessing AI for fraud prevention and financial inclusion in BFSI. As we are all aware, India's digital financial ecosystem today operates at a scale have enabled millions of citizens. Volumes run into billions on a monthly basis. Onboarding happens in seconds, not days. While this scale is a source of enormous strength, at the same time, we must ensure that stronger controls do not come at the cost of exclusion or friction, especially for first-time users and MSMEs. This is where AI must be reframed not as a tool, but as an infrastructure. While we speak of AI in BFSI, the real shift is from after the fact detection to in-flight intelligence. AI enables continuous risk assessment across onboarding, transactions, and networks. It allows institutions to detect subtle behavioral anomalies, identify mule networks, and surface systemic risk that no human or static rule engine can identify in real time. If designed correctly, AI can reduce false positives, lower friction, and improve customer experience. This is also where Indo-Singapore partnership becomes very powerful. While India brings to the table population-scale digital rails, diverse real-world data sets, and deep technology talent pool, Singapore brings regulatory oversight, very strong governance frameworks, and proven capability in operationalizing advanced technology responsibly. In particular,
to show up here. And I know it's not the most comfortable standing like this. Sorry, can't do much about it, but we'll hopefully try to make the conversation interesting. Second, I do want to, Sarika, introduce one more thing. I couldn't be more pleased to have such high quality organizations, whether it is Temasek, DBS, Protean, with all of them actually, and have the highest regard. So I'm deeply pleased. I think Suresh spoke very eloquently about this partnership between India and Singapore, and I think the one other thing which I also want to further emphasize is there's a lot which both sides bring to the table. Represented here as well. I personally worked in the early years of when Aadhaar got rolled out and the foundation of the digital public infrastructure in India was created. And the amount of progress we made in the last decade has been remarkable. At the next decade from here on, there are many opportunities, but there are also many questions. And that's the kind of thing we'll debate. Can we take it to the next level? Can trust be the foundation in this context is very, very critical. So I think that's what we're going to talk about. So the basic digital onboarding has happened. Almost all of us have seen that happen, whether it is on payments, credit, all of that. But trust is a place where AI can play a very important role in establishing the infrastructure by giving it real-time risk intelligence, fraud prevention. It could also create more of those. So I think and there's a whole host of questions about, can it go from pilots to scaling? Can it be truly explainable? Can it create privacy, auditability, all of those? So those are the lenses we'll examine. And I'm going to go around and ask questions to each of the participants. So I'm going to start first with Suresh, with you itself. So while you get your water. So as you said, our digital financial rails are now at population scale, right? Everywhere I travel, people are hugely impressed by what India has accomplished on those. So with rising velocity, but also increasingly sophisticated fraud, right? And the legacy-based rules are no longer going to be sufficient in this context. Do you think AI can provide a core trust infrastructure as part of this? Will be good to hear your views. You want to press this button, little button. Slide it to the right.
Yes. Am I audible? No, thanks, Neeraj. Thanks for the question. No, as I said earlier, I think first of all, it's the scale that we are talking about today. As we are all aware, and we very proudly know, we track it month on month. UPI last did 20 billion plus transactions in a month, right? And interestingly has also doubled in the last 2 to 3 years. And we are actually talking about projected losses exceeding a lakh crores if things are not caught. So rule-based mechanisms, while they are important to set a threshold, but they are 0-1 signals which work at a transactional level. So you can either block transactions above a certain value, you can block your daily limits, which we all do on our applications. They are just not good enough to work at scale in the way the transaction velocity is going. So I think three key things which come through it. One is the speed and reactiveness. Now, clearly, when we are talking about transaction happening at this scale, it's very difficult because fraud happens in milliseconds. And you would always be caught post facto in trying to prevent it. One simple example, if you're having a few cars on the road, it's very easy to have fixed traffic signals, right? And the red light and green light just signify move or don't move. But when you're talking about millions of cars on the road, which are creating congestion, accidents, you need a very smart adaptive system which can dynamically change the rules of the game and change the signals and the traffic control and the directioning. And I think interestingly, today's experience in entering this place would have been far superior if AI would have dynamically managed which queue to take and to come in over here. So I think speed and reactiveness is one. The second part clearly is networked intelligence is very critical. Because today, when we are talking about all of us from the financial services industry, we are very familiar with a term called mule accounts. Now, what is that? Effectively, the money is moved from the victim's account into one or more accounts in milliseconds and then just branches out into multiple accounts, including cross-border accounts. So one single institution which is managing it will see maybe a genuinely created account into which the money is moving. But unfortunately, while it could be coerced or fraudulent, you're not rules are today giving you just limits. It's 0-1. So you have challenges around false detection and false positives. And you're excluding people by just saying if a transaction is above a certain value, stop it. And in this case, they are real live transactions and people's livelihood depends on it. So AI really plays a role. We spoke about it. Whether it is networked intelligence, which means you are now looking at behaviors across multiple accounts, across multiple institutions, and you are seeing anomalies in those behavior, and you are able to catch it at source. And clearly the third one being very
of course, what you said, data is not available, it's all over the place, there's no single source of truth. Every plant, every manufacturer, every branch has its own data source. So bringing it all together and making sense out of it, of course, is tedious and is required for any AI systems to work at scale. And pilots are designed to be successful. Everybody wants the POCs and pilots to be successful. And hence they are successful. Nobody wants scale up. And hence it has to come from top down, and we have to start from making the data readiness. But a couple of other things also come in the way. I think scale up is less of a tech problem and more of a mindset shift. We often have very low tolerance for AI systems when they start making decisions. When humans make decisions, it's fine for them to make errors. But when an AI makes a decision, we, of course, as human beings, we start judging the AI and often call it, this is not working. This is not something that can work at scale. We can't rely on this. I think we need to move on from using AI as a rule-based system, like Suresh was saying, into a paradigm where AI is learning on a daily basis from the data and from the patterns. And also realize that it is going to get better. Today, what it is doing is, even if it is as good as human, not better, of course it is much better in many areas, but it is creating capacity before it is creating new capabilities. So what you were able to do in 2 hours, we can now do the same thing at the least in 2 minutes. And imagine approving a loan with all the fraud checks done in place, from an application to cash happening in 2 minutes straight through, is something that India needs at scale. And I think AI is going to play a big role in making that happen. So thinking of AI as first catalyzing capacity and then adding new capabilities, I think is one way to get to scale quickly. And as the capabilities increase, I think we will see much more use cases come to life in real life.
That's some excellent points about catalyzing capacity first and mindset. Yeah. Thanks, Bhuvan. Manish, I'm going to come to you. So Manish, 811, for those who don't know, is like a bank within a bank and has been remarkably successful. And you do a lot of stuff, onboarding decisions, multiple kinds of transaction decisions, et cetera. I'm sure when you meet your friendly regulator, they ask you, can you do the explainability, accountability, and all those questions, right? I mean, and rightfully so. The regulators have to ask that question. If I was in their shoes, I would ask the same question. Do you think this tool is helping you with that? And not just regulators. Why just regulators? Even customers can ask this question. Auditors can ask that question. So it's everybody can ask that question. And please shed some light on this.
Yeah. So as everybody knows, we are one of the largest acquiring engine in India. And two of the problem which does not let me sleep is AI and fraud. And when this session was happening that AI and fraud is happening, I said I better attend this. Primarily, if AI has to be used in financial, which is a highly regulated one, it has to be explainable, and governance mindset has to be very much into the people who are building it up. One acronym which I have founded and which works is JCT. It has to be justifiable. Any decision which has been taken, whether the credit has been denied, a transaction has been stopped, how do we justify that? That is J. C is contestability, where anybody who has been affected by the decision, he should have the wherewithal to go back and contest, ask for what was the reason per se. And third is the traceability. The decision which happened, which AI made it across, can you go back and see what were the reason, what were the biases which made that decision to happen? Now in this, there are three stakeholders, as you rightly said. One is customer, for whom transparency and recourse are very critical. The second is auditors, for whom traceability and evidence, they would look at model, lineage, and versioning. They would look at any biases which exist into it. And the third and the most important stakeholder is the regulator, who's looking for evidences and accountability. They are looking for human in the loop. AI can continue to make decisions, but is there a human who's looking at the decision being done? A classical example is video KYC was launched in India in May 2020. We were the first one to go live, but regulator was very clear that while the systems will do all of those checks, face match, all algo run, there has to be somebody sitting behind who will go through the process to ensure that person who's getting onboarded is a real person. So I think if we follow this JCT, justifiable, contestable, and traceable, and take care of all three stakeholders, which is customer, auditor, and regulator, we probably would be in good shape.
Excellent. I love that framework, JCT. So I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, Manish, on that. So using JCT, do you think you can help customers reduce friction for customers, right? But, and also, the other error can be unintended exclusion, right? Whether it is retail, whether it is MSME, do you think that is possible to accomplish both lower friction and not unintended exclusion?
Yeah. So if we start from onboarding, right, there could be tiered onboarding can happen. A low friction product where the risks are lower can get started very quickly. And as the progression happens, there could be friction like video KYC, there has to be a people. If it is little higher kind of stuff, there could be a physical PD, which happens in terms of onboarding. Now, as Suresh also mentioning, gone are the days when rule-based things can protect us. It has to be real-time decisioning, which has the context to it. Just to give you an example, one of the fintech in UK has launched something called as street mode. What it does is, in an app, I can tell these are my safe places, my home, my office. But there are a lot many times where mobile get picked up when you are walking on the street. Now, if somebody picks up your mobile and the payment being instant, money can move very quickly. So what has been done, if it is not my safe place, if money has to move, I need to do face authentication. Even if I put in an order saying that move 1 lakh from this account to other, it does not happen real time. It has a lag of whatsoever time you put in. And after that time, again, the face authentication happen. Now, if somebody has to take my money, he probably better kidnap me for an hour for the money to move using my app. So, Neeraj, I think definitely AI is helping. We need to have guardrails, have to ensure that we use it in the right context. But I firmly believe AI has a huge future and it is helping financial institution as well.
I love this street mode. Yeah, I mean, that's a great, I had not heard of this. I love it. Saurabh, I'm going to come to you to build off this, if that's okay. Firstly, would you resonate with the points Manish made? And then is there any, let's start with that, and I have a question on regulation to follow up. And Srijay, I'm coming to you right after. Don't feel like unwanted.
I think I fully agree with what Manish has said. Just a couple of things. One is that every fast car needs a brake for us to be having a sense of safety. Similarly, any AI development will require guardrails to be in place so that we know we are going in the right direction. And that is something that we followed, at least in our organization. We may use different acronyms. So we call it PURE. So the questions we ask ourselves is, can we do it? Whether regulations allow us. The second is, should we do it? Whether it meets the PURE framework, which is purposeful, unsurprising to the customer, respectful, explainable. Something similar to JCT. I think the only thing I'll add to that is respectful. Because one of the things which data seems to have is a biases. So if I'm using historical data and it creates a bias which excludes a section of the society, I think that is something that we need to take care while making sure that we are building the right AI models. And the last one which we have is, how do we do it? Is make sure that once the models are there, we have the right kind of governance on it. I think these are the things, if we were to take care, I don't see any reason why AI should not go even faster in our life.
And just, you see regulation as an enabler, or regulators are willing to play ball?
Regulations are critical, and regulators are having the right kind of framework for getting the banks. So Singapore, we have the FEAT framework. In India, RBI has come out with a concept paper around it, and we have gone through it. It sort of aligns with what we have in a place, and it's critical.
Okay, Srijay, as I said.
Sorry, just one point I'd like to add is, I think the important part which regulators are facilitating is sharing of data between the organizations. And I think that will be the most crucial fact, because as a bank, I can look at my own data. But if I'm getting a larger information of frauds, what's happening, those kind of information will really help us make better decisions.
Got it. Thanks, Saurabh. Srijay, I'm going to ask you from a long-term capital as well as ecosystem perspective. Do you see a convergence, or where do you see the strongest conversion between this AI-driven infrastructure or trust infrastructure and financial markets, maybe financial inclusion, both in this part of the world as well as on cross-border financial corridors?
Thanks, Neeraj. If you think about from a long-term capital standpoint, it's very easy to say that, look, the convergence will happen in functional areas, and it's very important, and I'll talk a little bit about that.
Sorry, before that, Srijay works for Temasek, and Temasek is one of the larger deployers of capital in this part of the world for sure, if not all parts of the world.
So I think, there are functional areas where it's really important, but also there is a larger strategic imperative that we shouldn't forget. So let me touch on the functional areas first. So if you think about the functional areas, one is the role of AI in capital allocation. Now, capital allocation is the basic building block of inclusion, the right capital allocation, because if you misallocate, that's a systemic risk. And that is really what we want to avoid as capital allocators. And if you want to avoid that, you really need to embed that trusted infrastructure in the financial plumbing, all the things that all of you said, right? Data integrity, provenance, model drifts, how do you fix model biases? All those governance has to be embedded in the financial plumbing. I say this because, if I try to simplify it, it's really saying that if you have trusted data, you have trusted models. If you have trusted models, you have trusted capital allocation. If you have trusted capital allocation, then you have trusted inclusion. And that's really the flywheel that hopefully we can iron out as we progress in the future. Now, the second functional area is what is the role of AI in the context of doing audits, what I call the audit layer, which is validation of disclosures. As capital allocators, we are always relying on disclosures and the traceability of them, particularly in the context of climate and ESG, where you're looking at multimodal data to validate whether something is accurate or not. Again, the role of AI in the context of audit is very important. So I would say capital allocation and auditability and traceability are functional areas where long-term capital is particularly interested from a convergence standpoint. But now I want to come back to the strategic imperative. And this is very important because we don't think convergence sits in applications, in fintech apps. Convergence sits in the infrastructure. And that is extremely important because that's where the network effects are created. The second thing where I think the strongest convergence comes is actually outside of banking. It actually happens in the supply chains. And if you're able to embed finance in the supply chains, think about agriculture, renewables, the labor markets, that is where the impact is highest. And for us to get there, that is where the trusted AI infrastructure has to converge all the points that you mentioned, which is identity, productivity, credit, and in the context of cross-border interoperability. I'll just end that note with a line that I wrote when I was reflecting on this topic yesterday, which is when financing is embedded in production networks, inclusion is a byproduct of economic growth. And that is exactly what we are talking about. That's where you can be a lot more inclusive and also drive growth and productivity as you think about capital and capital allocation.
Excellent. So I'm going to go to another round of questions, but I think there's been a lot of alignment of the thoughts that the possibilities of the AI are enormous. Yes, there are things to work around. So just to give you a heads up, I'm going to ask at the end, all of you, one thing you feel excited about with AI and one thing you feel skeptical about with AI. Okay, so but just a heads up, but nevertheless, let me carry on. Suresh, I'm going to come back to you on this India-Singapore AI hub that you and I actually engaged a lot on. What do you think are possibilities which can happen on data, on compute, on talent, or other places where there could be, or information sharing, or intelligence, or just share some of those perspectives, please.
So Neeraj, I'll carry it forward from what Srija just mentioned. Building AI as a trust infrastructure. I think we spoke about it earlier that today, when fraud is happening, our defenses are fragmented, but fraud is connected. We took the example of the mule accounts. So you are really talking cross-border intelligence to be built into the AI infrastructure. And one simple starting point is we are talking about multiple institutions which are spread across different countries. When you're looking at an AI Singapore hub, when we were looking at the entire idea, it was saying how can the two countries come together and build a shared infrastructure which is powered by AI to be able to create this cross-border impact from an intelligence perspective and very, very closely linked to the theme we are talking about over here. And underlying it, what would be critical? And when we talk about shared infrastructure in India, we've had reasonable success in what we today call as programmable registries. We are building large data registries, and that starts from whether we talk about agriculture as an ecosystem, or we talk about education as an ecosystem, whether they are institutional or whether they are at an individual level. Very simply, one example I can take over here is that between the two nations, if we can build a mule account registry, any fraudsters, you are able to look at it and you are able to identify in a cross-border ecosystem. You're talking about intelligent onboarding, where each country is respecting and having a common framework for identifying the right people who are operating within the ecosystem and are being able to connect to each other. And last but not the least, this co-sharing of data can also mean that we can have a lot of predictability in the risk analytics, because everything starts with data. Two countries sharing data. But coming to that, I would again say, more learning also from our banker friends on the panel. The data which is being shared has to be anonymized. So that risk should be clearly mitigated to say this is not customer data we are sharing, but these are anonymized signals, behavioral patterns which come together, and doing anything at a cross-border level will strengthen the digital, cross-border rails. It will help us to break any supply chains of risk and fraud that we see out there. And it will help us to do preemptive onboarding of the right institutions and the right individuals into the ecosystem for exchange. And I think the biggest beneficiaries could be the MSMEs and the citizens between the two countries as you create more increased cross-border engagement between the two places.
Well articulated, Suresh. Bhuvan, maybe I'll come to you back to my theme of pilots to scale. Is there a possibility of using this corridor also as an enabler for moving from pilots to production models?
Absolutely, and let me build upon what Suresh was talking about. We've been discussing setting up AI Hub as a platform. Data sharing with, of course, anonymity is going to be crucial for us to prevent large-scale frauds and become organized when it comes to detecting and avoiding fraud. But just from the perspective of sharing best practices of what works, what does not work in one country versus another. Sharing talent is another area that we're going to look at as we set up the AI Hub across the two countries. And then as we move on to sharing learnings, sharing data, and then sharing, perhaps building platforms that can enable us to run some of these high-profile algorithms and AI systems at scale with data that's trusted as well as verified across multiple entities with cross-border signals as well. So I think that's going to be a key stepping stone towards setting up the AI Hub. The other thing coming from pilot to scale is, again, this very engineering mindset of using the latest technology, especially in all the banks and financial services industries. All of us have become tech companies, and we want to chase the latest technologies. I think we are at a point where technology evolution, especially in the AI space, is way ahead than the adoption. We have to use the current technology really well, put the right guardrails in place before we go after the next model, the next release of what is happening in Silicon Valley and so on. I think we need to use the current technologies really well and make sure that we are able to scale up what works before we go to the next one.
No, well said. And I see this desire to chase every shiny object being quite out there. Srijay, this is the last formal question, and then I have this common question to all of you, in case time permits, and I look at Sarika to the time. But you are the big mover of capital, as I said earlier. What signals do you look for when you back AI-led financial infrastructure at scale? Is it? I wouldn't give whatever. What signaling helps you?
Yeah, I
back?
think this is the truth for any investor is they're looking for returns, and the expected returns is a function of the risk that you're taking. So when you think about the convergence, when you think about the trusted infrastructure, does it bring the risk of capital down? Because if it brings the risk of capital down, then you will deploy a lot more capital, not just from an equity standpoint, but also from a credit standpoint. And that is extremely important because inclusion is all about being able to allocate capital and all the things that you said, right? How do you reduce friction costs? How do you reduce doing business cross-border? That's something that we're trying to do through the hub. All this come into play in bringing that cost of doing business down, which brings the cost of risk down, which helps to deploy more capital with a much better expected return profile. So nothing less, nothing more. Yes.
Well said, Sujay. And maybe then, sorry, I'm looking at the clock. There are 4 minutes to 4:25, so I'm going to go through. Oh, this is saying more time than what you're saying. So I'm following the 4:25 rule. If you feel we can go to 4:30, whatever. But this is the last question, really speaking. Yeah. Okay, fine. So, Srijay, maybe you first. One thing you feel very excited about, and maybe one thing you feel skeptical or still unclear about.
I think I'm extremely excited about how this is a potential for us to move up the value chain of anything that we do. And if you think about where I spend my time, I can move 20-30% up the value chain because I get more productive. And that applies to anybody and everybody on whatever they're doing. So moving up the value chain as humanity, I think, is the biggest opportunity. I think what I'm worried about is dilution of human accountability, because there will be a lot of decisions that are taken by agents, machines, but human accountability has to stay. That human in the loop on how certain decisions are taken. So I hope we don't dilute accountability while we think about the opportunities on the productivity and moving up the value chain side.
Well said. Saurabh?
I think the way I look at it is, I'm excited about the fact that we are still just started the journey on AI. We may talk about we have been in it for 8 years or 10 years, but the fact is we are still touched the tip of the iceberg. So what lies ahead of us is really exciting time. Within DBS, what we see is that nearly 2/3 of our employees actively use AI in their day-to-day work. So, and that is something we have seen benefit everybody in their productivity, individual productivity. I think the second piece is a slow sort of headline from our CEO is, we want to be an AI-enabled bank with a heart. So the point is, somewhere as the AI become more pervasive, the empathy should not go away. And that is something that worries us. And that's why we say we want to be an AI-enabled bank with a heart.
I love that. Suresh?
Yeah, Neeraj, so keeping it sort of short, I would say to me, the positive is inclusion and the negative is exclusion, right? Because when we talk about inclusion, and we use this example a lot, our ability to communicate with the last person who's not digitally savvy, because we spent many years talking about digital literacy. And you were teaching people to, sort of talk to machines. And now the machines can talk to you, and that's made a big difference. I look at my, last 2 roles, whether we were doing M-Pesa I remember hearing the stories that the Kenyan population was numerate but not literate. So they virtually built the entire ecosystem on saying people know how to do numbers, but they can't do instructions. And when we built India Post Payments Bank, our biggest challenge was digital literacy. We spent 10 million man hours of training the postmen because we had 300,000 postal workers getting enabled to service the ecosystem. And in today's world, it becomes a very, very easy thing to do with AI embedded over there. And even for a citizen who has a simple mobile phone, your ability to converse and be able to do what you want to do is much easier. Exclusion becomes the challenge because, yes, as some people adopt, there are the others who will get left behind. And I think India till now has adopted a very fine model of both assisted and self-serving, individuals. So I think assisted digital models in our country will remain very strong and need to be kept very strong so that if you can't do it yourself, somebody can help you do it.
Thanks, Shall, of this inclusion and exclusion. Bhuvan,
I think I'm really excited about the fact that with agents coming in, humans will get to exercise much more agency, ironically, because the drudgery of the job goes away. And I can see a future where every human, every person, whether you're in your personal productivity capacity or as an enterprise worker, you become 10x of who you are because you're using AI, or AI is working for you. I think that's really exciting. What's worrying me actually about AI and how it's going in the last 4 or 5 years is I'm worried our education system is yet to catch up. And are we preparing the AI natives to be truly different from how we were brought up?
excellent. Manish, and then I'll probably bring it to a wrap after that. Yeah.
So most of it has been said. If I have to put it across what I'm super excited, I am a businessman. I'm a business guy. The speed which AI brings, the thing which I would launch in 3 months probably can be launched in 15 days. So that is what is really exciting about AI. The thing which bothers me is, do I have a job tomorrow?
Actually, surprisingly, nobody else talked about that, so it's just interesting. I was waiting for it to come, but it didn't. Yeah. Okay, so look, we are pretty much at the fag end of the panel. I first and foremost wanted to thank the panelists. Genuinely, I read a lot about AI. I'm quite well versed, but I learned from each of their perspectives a lot, and I hope you also took away something from each of these speakers. They had thought a lot about it, and they brought the wealth of their wisdom from their respective organizations to bear as well. So hopefully you saw cumulative wisdom of some very iconic organizations come into play. I just, if I was thinking, what will I add to this? Maybe there's one theme I will add. At my organization, BCG, we often use this phrase 10, 20, 70. And I think it fits in with what people are saying. 10 is often the technology, and 20 is the algorithms, but the 70 is the people. So any big change needs the 10 and the 20 to be complementary to the 70. And often, in many large change agendas, we talk a lot about 10 and 20, and we talk a lot less about 70. And I think you touched upon it in different ways, but if I could leave that, the enormity of that is huge. And we need to, whatever you are doing in your respective places, keep thinking about that. Whether it is inclusion or exclusion, whether it's agency increasing or decreasing, all of those things, whether it's learning, unlearning, all of those things, that 70 is a very, very critical part of the equation. But I also want to bring it to a wrap by thanking all of you. You've been incredibly patient, very engaged. From what I can tell from your body language, it's hard when you're standing or sitting uncomfortably. So a huge shout out to you as well. And with that, thank you. I don't know if, Sarika, I don't know the panel design. The questions are offline.
So I was about to
Yeah,
stem on
okay.
that. Since we have courtesy the organizers 10 minutes, we can give 5 minutes for the Q&A if the panel is fine with that. Yeah.
Couple of people said they had to leave sharp at 4:30 for flight. So I want to be respectful of that. If they can stay 5 more minutes, guys, everybody. Yeah,
It's
5.
okay.
Okay.
Fine.
Will you moderate? I mean, there are lots of hands.
I would try to.
The trick in this is be short, snappy with the question. And what I will do is maybe let me do this. Like, let me take a few questions so that we don't like overload one. So, okay, since he's put his hand up first, can somebody pass the mic to him? If somebody can help me with that. Okay. We will take you,
Hello.
the lady there, as well as the gentleman here. We'll take three
That's
questions
it,
and then
that's
we'll
it.
see what we
Yeah,
do.
that's it.
Just say it out, yeah.
As we already know, we are moving to the autonomous systems. So, like as I'm building like a system, like everything will be automated. Like if the company want to do something, so it need to be have a lot of step of paying. So like it will be completely autonomous. It will pay 10 to 20 transactions without requiring human in loop. So would you allow this kind of system?
Okay, good. Let's load a couple of questions and then maybe different people will. Will you? Yeah, can I? क्या possible है से? Okay. 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 So sorry, once again, I was just going to ask her to, yes, raise your question. Go ahead.
So hi everyone, I'm Muskan and I'm a financial analyst working with the Capgemini since 3 years. So as in Capgemini, like I'm
Give the
working
question
as an
fast.
analyst.
We're short on time. Yeah, please.
So as in corporate employee, we know that we are all around with the AI and progressively growing. But if we are talking about the other than the employees, they are still questioning the AI. So what key points we have to check and we have to follow for the same to grow the AI in India as like in other countries as well.
Just pass. Okay, pass the mic to this gentleman, and then I'll ask different panelists if you want to take one of the questions, and I'll go around so that we can
Thank
just
you.
cover
Uncle,
this.
this said my question to Bhuvan that no, basically you did mention that we are less forgiving of AI and then more forgiving to human being. And every CEO has a tendency that no, shall I follow this shiny object or shall I wait and watch? This more like a deja vu moment when UPI Aadhaar ecosystem was building up. I was very fortunate to deliver the first loan on Aadhaar. India Stacks traveled all the slum areas. Now, you did mention that we move from pilot to scale. What are the best practices work for you, which every CEO, every CXO can learn from this room that no, from pilot, which pilot to take and which pilot to
Okay.
so let go, right?
All right. So let's go the autonomous agents question. Saurabh, if you could take over, if is that okay? The question of is you're saying agents without any human in the loop. Do you envisage that? I get it. So don't add more questions right now. I'm worried about more. Let him answer. But if you want to answer, then that's.
So as we were stand today, I'm not going to answer about the future, is the fact that we still do not have enough comfort to let AI run it fully within banking world. We have human in the loop helping us in any transaction or anything that gets processed. We do not have that confidence right now, but as the time passes by, it can happen. But as of now, I don't have that view.
Oh, no. Sorry, that's what I want to avoid. Are you able to take the whitelisting question on the UPI evolution or given?
Yeah, so but there are challenges of whitelisting. How many IP would I? So would I block the real customers moving the money is a challenge. I understand that there's a fraud and there are ways to control frauds. So what you are articulating probably might not be the only solution to control fraud. Are you getting me? So whitelisting of IPs, individual IPs, because IPs are getting created, which are genuine as well as fraudulent. Very difficult to whitelist IP from a UPI perspective, but there are ways and means to control fraud which are happening on UPI, and we are working with NPCI to control those kind of frauds.
Okay, maybe not a full answer, but hopefully. And Bhuvan, on the scaling one,
The only best practice do less scale.
you did three projects in AI versus 5. Put it very sharply in. So less is more. I think you had a broader question on adoption, etc. So I don't know if anybody wants to take the lady's question. But I thought I touched upon that a little bit in the 10-20-70. Sarika, there are many hands. I'm conscious of the time.
I can't allow that. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. If the organizers give me another 20 minutes, then I can. You
No, no,
can't.
no. I don't think it's fair
And
to
that's not
ask.
possible. So I think for the people who couldn't, we couldn't answer the queries. If you can catch the speakers outside, please do so. Write to Fiki. We will be happy to facilitate. That's the answer. But thank you, panelists. It was really lovely to hear all of you. The thoughts were enormous. I'm sure we did justice to the time of the people who are sitting here, even standing here. Like Neeraj repeatedly said, we value it. We really value it. So whether it's a JCT framework which being talked by, or we talked about AI for scalability, or how AI needs to be embedded as part of the design or the financial ability. So I think there was lots of thoughts. If I start summarizing on each and everything with Neeraj has already done so, I think that's something which really needs to ponder is important question. Neeraj did said talked about AI and jobs, and you got the answer from the panelist. It's about productivity. It's about your own reskilling. It's about reaching high, and the quality matters better than the quantity. So that is very, very, very much important with this. And since it's in the ages of the ISBR, and we started with that kind of an approach, so we have talked about how we are talk the assisted models versus the self-service models. So the combination of India and Singapore really caters to both sides of it. And I think that's the really beauty of this forum, that we are able to have those best practices across the countries, not limited to this sector, but others also. So with this, we'd like to thank the panelists who have taken out time with us. Of course, I'll be not repetitive with all, but Mr. Suresh Sethi, Mr. Saurabh Mittal, Mr. Bhuvan Lodha, Mr. Sujay Ghosh, Mr. Manish Agarwal, and our moderator, Mr. Neeraj Agarwal. Can I have thank you. And a round of applause to all of you for being sharing your time and being with us. I'd like to thank the AI Impact Summit, the organizers, for giving Fiki this opportunity to organize this. My own team, where we have a Singapore desk led by Rajiv, Malvika, Amita, and Vrinda, and my own team members with it, Love and Sudhi, who has been participative of this. And we have Mrityunjay from the BFSI sector supporting it. List goes on. It's the hard work of many people at the background which gets you here. Fiki is delivering 8 sessions. This is the second, and we look forward to your support over. Before the speakers move out, and I have 2 minutes, there's a mementos from the organizers. We'd like to facilitate all of you with the same. Over to you, Love.
Could you just present the memento to Neeraj sir? Next, I would request you to present it to Suresh sir. Suresh sir. Next, I would request you to present it to Bhuvan sir. Now, may I request Rajiv sir to give mementos to Srijay sir. Next to Mani sir. Thank you so much. Saurav sir is left. I'm so sorry.